Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to start on the Project Jeep again. If you recall, a while ago, we were working on this thing. We had to stop because we had some wrong parts. We started on a highline fender install. Inner fenders were wrong. Those parts took a long time to come in. And then some things got in the way and we had to stop. But we're back on it. And I'm excited because we have a much better idea of, well, what we're going to do with this build. And I think you guys are going to like it. So let's jump in. To be honest, it took me a little bit to remember where we were at on this project. I know we left off with the driver's side fender and then the inner fender not working because we ordered the wrong one. These are highline fenders, not standard tube fenders. But it still took a little bit for me to wrap my mind around where exactly we were at. And that was not just installing the passenger side fender, highline fender, but also having to deal with all the smog and the airbox and all the equipment that has to be mounted underneath. Truth be told, removing these fenders really is not hard. You just remove the stuff that's bolted to it, and then you just remove a few bolts, and the stock factory fender will just slide right off. Now, on this Jeep, putting these fenders on has become quite a difficult task. You see, this Jeep was rolled. We picked it up as a rolled project. We've fixed a lot on it already, but because of that, none of the body is really square anymore, and so it's a constant fight to get things, well, bolted up properly. What I end up doing on a lot of these parts is just loosening things on the other side of the Jeep and then pulling and pushing as hard as I can to get things to line up. In the case of the grill, I had to remove all the grill supports, loosen the fender on the other side that I had already installed, and just wedge things in place. And right here I'm using a ratchet strap wrapped around the frame to actually pull that fender in line with the body so it's not it's not egregiously out of whack. I really like that. I like how much clearance it adds. Stock fenders are about down here. These raise it in, and then you can see the inner fender compared to what it used to be. There's a lot more room. Now these are stock height. I think these are 29s. The idea is to run, a really big tire in here and not touch any of the suspension. So the decision to not mess with the suspension was spurred on by a few factors, and the main one is money. Honestly, this Jeep was rolled, and we already have a lot of time and money into putting it into a decent state, at least what you see here. Now, we also had to replace the fenders, and so we thought, we can kill off two birds with one stone here. We have to replace the front fenders. If we do high lines, we can have all the room we need to fit as big of a tire as we want on this thing and not have to put out a lot of money for suspension. The problem with touching suspension on a TJ, it can be done and it can be done well, but in order to fit a 35 or a 37, you're talking a huge lift which requires long arms, and when you start getting into long arm territory, you're talking a lot of money and time fabricating and getting angles and geometry correct. The factory geometry from Jeep is actually really good on these things. It's when we start lifting them and start messing with that suspension that it becomes poor. But if we put a decent set of shocks on this and remove that sway bar in the front, I'm willing to bet that this thing is going to flex pretty well and actually ride really nice. We're going to have nice control arm angles. Everything is going to just work really well. We're just moving the body out of the way so we can run really large tires, and that's kind of our plan with this. It's kind of to keep it on a low budget as much as we can and just stab really big tires on it and run it down the road. The most difficult thing about working with these highline fenders is just finding a spot for everything. Everything that bolts to the factory fenders on a TJ, you have to now find an alternative location for. And to make it even worse, there's not really many guides out there to tell you how to do this, for reasons being that each Jeep is different and custom, and TJs are really unique in that there's many split years. Some years have AC on the passenger side like you see on top of the motor, and later years it'll be on the bottom driver's side, and this goes on and on with many different parts of components, so it makes it difficult. So for the other side, we're gonna have to wait for an airbox to come in, in order to figure out how to mess with that, and then we can work everything else around that. We also have to install on this side the smog equipment. This is the canister, and this thing is just a huge chungus. So what I'm thinking about doing is actually taking the bracket apart and separating these two and see if I can kind of wiggle it in there, wiggle it down here somewhere. Also, we're gonna try, but I doubt we're gonna be able to. I'm gonna try to keep the washer fluid bottle. The one that we have will not fit, I already know that, but we might be able to fashion something else if I can fit the smog equipment in here without too much trouble. There we go. All the smog equipment is mounted now. All the lines are hooked up. In fact, we modified these lines by basically taking away the hard lines and just putting in rubber hoses. That way I could separate these pieces and put them all in here. I want the smog equipment because, I mean, obviously we want this to be street legal, and in California I have to have it. There are two important lessons that I learned thus far installing these highline fenders. One, they're easier, and two, they're harder than people make them out to be. and that's because the inner fenders themselves, I mean, they're easy to install. It's just a few bolts, they're aluminum, they're lightweight, they're easy to pop a hole into for mounting equipment. All that is absolutely true. But what isn't true is how difficult or how much time it takes to install the equipment that's sitting in your Jeep if you need it. Take the charcoal canister and the smog equipment that surrounds it. It took me hours to get that mounted in a logical way. Before, right before, I thought, you know, I'm just going to zip tie everything to that crossbar, the supporting bracket for the grill. And after I did that, I zip tied everything up there, and I came back to it the next day and I thought, that's not going to work. The zip ties are going to break. Things are just going to be in the way. I don't like it. It looks ugly. And so then I started messing with how to mount them to the fenders. And it's not difficult, but I can tell you I spent hours taking the charcoal canister out, putting it in my vise, putting a slight bend into it, putting it back in, then taking some pieces that mount to the charcoal canister, putting bends in those brackets, figuring out how these stuff move, all while not trying to add extra holes to the fender to keep things clean and tidy. This is the best I could come up with now, and I do like it. My brother, who's on this project with me, he likes it too, and it makes sense. It's easy to find out where the lines route and everything, but I'll tell you, this does take time, and that's my only advice. If you're working on something like this, it's gonna take your time if you want it done right. If you just want to zip tie it and hack it together, you can do it fast, but if you want it to look nice and function well, it's time consuming. Not much. Wow. So on the passenger side, we have to deal with the battery. Now I've got the battery tray and the battery mount all in. We have this battery in here, just an old one I have laying around that we're going to use for the time being. Upon inspection, we're obviously going to have to replace these battery cables. These are clearly no good. So we'll order some up and get those going. In the meantime, though, I had to figure out a few things. One, figure out where to mount the fuse box. I'm kind of thinking like this. It's really the only option I can figure out because we need the room over here for the we need the room over here for the air box because we're gonna have to do something with the air cleaner there, and I don't want to take up any room there, and I don't have that in yet. And I think this is gonna keep it low enough you can still access it. And to get the battery out, we'll just we'll have to unbolt the fuse box and we'll just move it out of the way, which is the thing. So I'm thinking about switching out the battery bracket. This is one I have laying around from a previous project. It's a little smaller. It's obviously more durable. These tend to bend when you crank them down. And this guy just seems a lot more bulky. Let's take a look at how they're going to fit in here. And I mean, when we're talking about space, right, with these highline fenders, there is not much space in here. So any inch that you can find is a lot, actually. Yeah, see? I mean, not that it makes the biggest difference, but with this guy in there, we have less space. We have the potential of contacting the bottom of this box more, and I just don't want to do that. I want everything mounted as well as we can. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and kind of hook this up. Hopefully this guy fits. No. All right, we're gonna have to drill that guy out. Does this one fit? Yeah. Let me drill this puppy out real quick. Yeah, see? I mean, not that it makes the biggest difference, but with this guy in there, we have less space. We have the potential of contacting the bottom of this box more, and I just don't want to do that. I want everything mounted as well as we can. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and kind of hook this up. Hopefully this guy fits. No. Alright, so I think we're going to have to end it there. I'm kind of at a standstill with parts. I can't mount the fuse box because I need the air intake, and I don't really know which route to go on the air intake. I have a few options that I'm researching, so I'll have to figure that out. If you have an idea, let me know. Mind you, I don't want to do a cowl intake. I don't like them. They're noisy. There's other things that are just, I'm not a fan, so I'm not going to do a cowl intake. But if you have other ideas, let me know, and I'll consider them, and we'll see if it's an option on this particular build. And then we need to cut the hood. So we'll do that in the next video, and then we'll wire up some blinkers because we don't have any, and see if we can figure out some sort of solution to make the windshield washers work. We might just have to leave those not working, unfortunately, but if we can't make them work, I will. I'm trying to make everything work, so and not miss out on any features, not have any negatives on this. The build is pretty unique. We still have a long way to go. There's a lot of work we're going to do to it, and this No Lift TJ is it's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to get this thing on the road, get this thing on the trails, see how it does, see how it performs, and really get into some tough stuff. Being a 3-speed automatic is like the best transmission for off-road in these TJs, to be honest, when it comes to an automatic. Not on the highway, but when it comes to off-road, they're like the one that you want, so I'm super excited for that. And being that it has no lift, it's going to have low center of gravity, but we're going to put some really big tires on there since we have this highline. And I don't know, I'm just super excited. I'm excited the way it's turning out. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So with that, guys, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Hit the comments if you have any questions or suggestions on this. Yeah, that's all I can say about that. See you in the next one.